Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Roea. I am co-founder of Quicksilver, Interchain liquid staking protocol for Cosmos. I am also co-founder of Ingenuity, which is the development company building and maintaining Quicksilver. So at Ingenuity, we are a global team of 10 people, and we also have a few hardworking interns. Maintaining Quicksilver and keeping it secure truly takes a village. And so in addition to our various partners and community contributors, Quicksilver is also supported by Orishtech and Notional. So just wanted to give these teams a proper shout out for their hard work. A lot has been said and done about liquid staking in Cosmos in the past year or so. And I've been thinking about what could be the best ways for me to contribute to that ongoing conversation. Firstly, as a non-technical founder that really cannot go into the technical details of the implementations, but also, and perhaps more interestingly, as someone that's been, that's had a front row seat into the inception and the unfolding of the liquid staking game over several years and across multiple ecosystems. So today with you, I'd like to go into sort of like what the design space of liquid staking looks like today. Why did you converge into that model? And also, like, what could be potentially, the challenges that will arise from that model. So I give you fantastic challenges and where to find them, the crimes of liquid staking. It is a bit of a dramatic title, but after all, I am French, and we are in Paris, so this is the perfect opportunity to embrace drama together. So how did we get here? Over the past few years, all liquids, or like most liquid staking protocols, and it really does not matter which ecosystem we are considering, by the way, most of these protocols had a tendency to sort of converge toward a certain model, and that model, or like that design space, had three main principles, or rather characteristics. So the first one is fungibility, and the ability for liquid staking tokens to be, fungible between each other, even though they were minted through different validators. The second main characteristic is the redemption rate model, where the liquid staking token is basically a redemption rate token that accrues value through its redemption rate. And basically, you only realize your rewards once you exit the protocol. And finally, the last characteristic that was predominantly used is the validator whitelist model, which is, liquid staking protocols curating a subset of validators and allocating stake to them. And these three characteristics sort of were the predominant characteristics of most liquid staking models for a reason, because, they solved for some of the biggest pain points of liquid staking. So they solved for, the DeFi usability. They also solved for the issue of distributing rewards. And they also kind of solved for slashing, or for risk mitigation, generally speaking. And by the way, if you want to learn more about this, there's a really great report from Chorus One that was published back in 2020. It's a liquid staking report. It's really cool, and it's still very relevant to this day. So if you want to learn more, do take a look at it. I believe also the other sort of important thing to keep in mind with regard to liquid staking design is that in parallel to this, each new generation of liquid staking provider came and sort of built on what came before it and gave liquid staking a new flavor. So, for example, Lido, like, not only did they solve the distribution or the delivery problem of staking rewards by creating a value accruing token or the redemption rate token, but they were also hyper-focused on slashing, or rather on not experiencing slashing. Then Marinade was hyper-focused on absolute decentralization. And with Quicksilver, we are trying to achieve all of this, all while maintaining user sovereignty, which is really important in our opinion, especially in an ecosystem like Cosmos. And if you want to learn more about how we plan to achieve that, there's plenty of information in our documentation and a lot of blog posts, so do feel free to check that out as well. So basically, this is what the design space of liquid staking converged towards in the last few years. But this has not been without criticism, and it did lead us to a sort of challenges that we are facing today, and some of which we might also come to face in the future. And now I want to explore these with you. So, obviously, the first and perhaps most obvious challenge is centralization. I think that today we have enough hindsight to sort of acknowledge that, unfortunately, liquid staking has been a centralizing force in proof-of-stake ecosystems. So, for example, around 30% of ETH is staked through Lido across something like 29 validators, which I think we can all agree that it's not a very desirable outcome. To their credit, the Lido team has been trying to address that and to address, like the issue of stake distribution with some initiatives like the Lido V2 upgrade. But the conclusion here is that, stake centralization is something that is very, very hard to try to address retrospectively. So this is the sort of issue of centralization at the validator set level. The argument can be made that centralization can also be viewed at the level of the liquid staking provider, where we could evolve to a situation where a disproportionate amount of stake is, also concentrated with a handful of liquid staking providers. And recently in Cosmos, and especially at the level of the Cosmos Hub, we have seen sort of a lot of community conversations and attempts to, regulate, for lack of a better word, regulate the use of liquid staking and try to make it safer and better for users. And trying to address centralization could be one of the topics discussed there. The other sort of challenge that we also see has to do with the consensus model of proof-of-stake ecosystems. So here it's important to understand that delegated proof-of-stake has an economic model of validator competition. So validators compete with each other for the stake of delegators, and by doing that, they are not just infrastructure providers. They provide a lot of value and a lot of services to the chains and the ecosystems that they validate on. They produce content, they educate the community, they participate in governance. They do a lot of cool stuff that also make them, economic actors at the level of these chains and these ecosystems. And the potential issue here is that liquid staking providers, as sort of, go between delegators and validators, kind of ignores this, this economic arrangement between delegators and validators that is really at the heart of delegated proof of stake. And we could even evolve to situations where there could also be some misaligned incentives there. So the thing here is that we are at a crossroad of sorts, and each path has its kind of trade-offs. So we could try to figure out and evolve towards liquid staking models and designs that do take into consideration the very complex and the very various the various economic arrangements between delegators and validators, or at the very least, we need to be cognizant of the dynamics that are at play here and how they can kind of influence the consensus at the level of, the chains and the ecosystems. Yes, another big one here is redemption rates. So as I mentioned before, a redemption rate token is a token that accrues value over time, and you only realize that value once you exit that position. All liquid staking tokens are redemption rate tokens. The other thing also is that you have to keep track of the evolution of that redemption rate. And honestly, whichever way you look at it, it's just very bad user experience. The other thing with redemption rates is that today most DeFi protocols have to query the redemption rate in some way or form. And usually the redemption rate is queried via oracles, which are not cryptographically verified. And I think we can all agree that that also is not a very ideal situation, because it adds an additional and unnecessary layer of risk there. So one way to go about it could be getting rid of the redemption rate model entirely, and having a fixed redemption rate between the asset and the liquid staked asset. So that would be a much better user experience for the user, and also it would be better for DeFi integrations as well, because they wouldn't need to keep querying redemption rates. Now a big one, governance. So especially in an ecosystem like Cosmos, right? The issue today with liquid staking is that if you decide to engage in liquid staking, whether you are an individual user or an institutional, if you engage in liquid staking, it means that you need to leave your governance participation rights at the door. And we can understand how that can be very limiting in an ecosystem like Cosmos. Now, thankfully, all the chain-agnostic liquid staking protocols today have a plan to sort of address that and make governance possible with liquid staking in some way or form. But even considering that, we talked earlier about the issue of potential centralization with liquid staking. If we believe that to be true, then we are going to be facing a concentration of, governance power as well. Now, the final challenge that I'd like to bring forward is silos everywhere, cross-chain nowhere. Again, this is just a very dramatic way of saying that we need to try to focus more on an interchain user experience for users in Cosmos. So, for example, the unbundling periods are really limiting the uptake of liquid staking in Cosmos. Of course, there's the liquidity staking module that is developed by iClusion, and that is going to be, it's highly expected, and it's going to be enabled on the Cosmos Hub soon. And it's really expected to improve the user experience and to drive liquid staking adoption up. Now to the issue of the complex DeFi usability, especially as as a user today in Cosmos. So yeah, basically there's fragmentation is a well-known issue in our ecosystem, unfortunately. And it is something that we tried to think about pretty early on at Quicksilver, where, for example, on the user interface, we have a page where users can have like one place to check all of their assets across all the multiple chains where they are liquid staking. And we also try to make it as easy, smooth, and simple as possible for users to, for example, transfer their liquid staked assets onto different chains, and so on and so forth. And I know there's a lot of other teams within Cosmos that are working on this. For example, the team at 42 Money is working on a UX aggregator where you can have like a one point of entry to all your wallets or your staked positions, LP positions, and of course liquid staking opportunities, which is really great. I think that the team at Skip is also working on something really cool to sort of minimize the steps that it takes for a user to go through a DeFi user journey. So one cool use case that we see for it with liquid staking is the ability for users to, for example, like liquid stake an LP in one click, one transaction. So a lot of things are, being done to drive the needle forward in the right direction. So yeah, lots of potential challenges that we expect for the future. But the thing about challenges is that it's always better to, try to embrace them as opportunities. It's at least what we are trying to do at Quicksilver. Because Quicksilver really was born out of a genuine desire, like not only to bring liquid staking to Cosmos, but also to try to address some of the biggest pain points that are brought forth by liquid staking, especially around user sovereignty, user choice, and governance, which is very important in an ecosystem like Cosmos. And so, today we are also trying to think about like what are the next challenges, the next pain points, the next sort of frontier of liquid staking. And so, I want you to imagine with me, like, what if you could leverage liquid staking tokens that exist on other chains for governance? Or what if, risk no longer had to be socialized, or users no longer had to keep track of really painful redemption rates? Also, what if single entities could like mint their own like customized liquid staking protocol based on their own preferences, their own risk profile, their own choices? So yeah, this is sort of what we expect are going to be like the next frontier for liquid staking protocols. And yeah, this is what we are currently also trying to work on, and that we'll be trying to sort of address through our product roadmap in the next year or so. So thank you so much for listening. Do connect with us if you want to keep this conversation going, and thank you very much.